why you're starting to see this weakness creep in. I mentioned the herd on the street column in today's Wall Street Journal, and that it was revealing, because the narrative in the press has been everything's great. The economy, everyone was fooled. The economy is a lot stronger than we think, and we're going to have a soft landing, and you name it. I think the economy is slowing down because money is what makes the economy go around. That's the fuel for the economy, and the money supply since March of 2022 has actually contracted. And we've only had 4 contractions ever in the history of the Federal Reserve since 1913. All those other contractions have led to recessions and economic slowdown. So I'm not surprised that the economy is slowing down.
The American dream, a land of opportunity where hard work leads to prosperity. But for many, that dream feels increasingly out of reach. Soaring inflation is already pummeling household budgets, and now a new threat emerges on the horizon: a potential recession. Professor Steve Hanke, a distinguished economist at Johns Hopkins University, isn't mincing words. He recently issued a stark warning about the U.S. economy, predicting a looming recession. Hanke's argument centers on a critical factor: the shrinking money supply. Hanke points out that despite optimistic media narratives, signs of economic slowdown are starting to emerge. He attributes this to a crucial factor: the contraction of the money supply, which has happened only 4 times in U.S. history since 1913. Historically, such contractions have been a precursor to recessions. The Federal Reserve, America's central bank, plays a critical role in regulating the economy. One of its primary tools is managing the money supply, which essentially represents the total amount of currency and credit available in the system. Imagine the money supply as the fuel powering the economic engine.
And what did we get? We got by mid 2022 with a lag, we had inflation peak out at 9.1%. Then the Fed puts on the brakes, and we have this contraction in the money supply that I mentioned. Only had 4 of them historically in the U.S. history before. And so you said, well, is the Fed doing the right thing? Well, it's just been doing the wrong thing all the time. And it's overdone this braking. That's why I think a recession is probably baked in the cake.
In response to the economic disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the Fed made a significant decision. They drastically increased the money supply. This strategy aimed to stimulate economic activity and prevent a deep recession. However, the increase was substantial, reaching a peak of 27% year-over-year growth in February 2021. This rapid expansion far exceeded what some economists, like Steve Hanke, consider a safe and sustainable growth rate. According to Hanke, there's a golden growth rate for the money supply, a specific level that promotes healthy economic activity while keeping inflation under control. The Fed's aggressive actions in 2021 pushed the money supply well beyond this ideal level. This rapid growth laid the groundwork for the inflationary pressures we're currently experiencing. By mid-2022, with inflation reaching a concerning peak of 9.1%, the Fed acknowledged the unintended consequences of their initial money supply surge. A course correction was needed. They implemented a strategy to contract the money supply, essentially tightening the spigot on the flow of money into the economy. The goal was to slow down economic activity and bring inflation under control. However, there's a catch. Economic effects don't happen instantaneously. Think of it like turning the steering wheel of a large ship. It takes time for the ship to change course. Similarly, changes in the money supply have a lag effect. The impacts on economic indicators like inflation and growth often take 12 to 18 months to fully materialize. This lag effect is a critical point in Steve Hanke's argument. While the Fed's recent contraction in the money supply might seem like a positive step, its full effect on inflation and recessionary risks might not be evident for some time. The economic consequences of the Fed's initial rapid money supply growth in 2020 and 2021 could still be unfolding potentially leading to a recession despite the recent efforts to tighten the money supply.
Financial crisis, the 2008 post-Lehman thing. Most people don't understand what was going on. Remember, we had 3 tranches of quantitative easing where the Federal Reserve pumped up the money supply, their contribution pumped up, and the balance sheet of the Fed expanded, and everybody said, oh, we're going to have a lot of inflation, this is going to be a disaster. Well, that never happened, and the reason why is that the banks actually were making a negative contribution to the money supply. And the reason they were is that we had Dodd-Frank financial regulation putting a noose around the neck of banks, and we also had what's called the Basel capital asset ratios. Basel III came in, increasing the capital asset ratios, and that caused it to constrain. So if the Fed hadn't been quantitative easing, we would have had really a huge recession because the banks weren't producing any money. They were actually contracting money.
However, the story doesn't end there. The economic turmoil of 2023, including high interest rates and the collapse of a few American banks, has caused a ripple effect. Banks already cautious due to stricter regulations post-2008 have become even more hesitant to lend. This tightening of lending conditions further restricts the flow of money in the economy. The combined effect of the Fed's QT and the bank's conservative lending practices creates a perfect storm for a recession. With less money circulating in the system, businesses struggle to access credit for expansion, consumers become more frugal, and economic activity slows down. This scenario raises serious concerns about the future of the U.S. economy.
4 contractions since the 20s that we talked about. The biggest one coming in the late 20s, early 30s, which the economy contracted, the money supply contracted by 39%. That was a pretty lengthy recession, nearly 3.5 years. What's the contraction this time? And
it's about 4%. It's about 4%.
So do you have a formula as to how long the recession will be?
As great as 1929, to 1933, that was a massive. That was the Great Depression.
Right.
We've never had anything like that. The other ones, there was one in the late 40s, then there was one, I think 36, 37, and then there was one in the 20s. But all of those were actually not even as great as this 4% number. But there's only been one really mega contraction in the money supply. That was the Great Depression, 29 to 33. And the other contractions that I mentioned, there were 3 others in addition to that. They were all somewhat a little bit less than the current contraction.
The recent contraction of the U.S. money supply, starting in March 2022, has raised concerns about a potential recession. This isn't the first time the U.S. has experienced a shrinking money supply. History offers a cautionary tale, with previous instances often leading to economic downturns. The most dramatic example is the Great Depression of the 1930s. A staggering 39% contraction in the money supply during this period is widely considered a significant factor in the severity and length of the recession. Businesses and consumers faced a scarcity of credit, hindering economic activity and prolonging the downturn. Fast forward to the 1930s again, and we see another episode of shrinking money supply, contributing to a recession. The Roosevelt recession of 1937 to 1938, though shorter than the Great Depression, was triggered in part by the Fed tightening monetary policy, leading to a decline in the money supply. This, coupled with a decrease in government spending, choked off economic growth and sent the nation into recession. The post-World War II era also witnessed a period of economic slowdown coinciding with a contraction in the money supply. U.S. had a contraction in the money supply following the wartime boom. This reinforces the historical connection between money supply and economic activity. These historical episodes serve as a stark reminder of the potential consequences of a shrinking money supply. While the current contraction isn't as severe as the Great Depression, it raises concerns about a potential recession, particularly when combined with other economic factors. Economist Steve Hanke is expecting as much as 4% economic contraction in the next 12 months. While the U.S. stock market continues to scale new highs, defying gravity, economic indicators like the shrinking money supply suggest a potential recession on the horizon. This disconnect can be unnerving for investors. Steve Hanke's warning about the money supply contraction echoes a historical pattern. Recessions are often preceded by or coincide with a sharp correction in stock prices. The easy access to credit that fuels a rising stock market can dry up during a recession, causing a plunge in valuations. This is a cautionary tale for investors who may be overly optimistic about the current market rally. To navigate this volatile landscape, consider diversifying your portfolio. Holding some cash readily available provides a safety net if a market downturn materializes. Cash allows you to capitalize on buying opportunities that might arise during a correction. Additionally, allocating a portion of your portfolio to gold can offer a hedge against inflation. Gold has a historical reputation for maintaining its value even when stock prices fall. Finally, investing in U.S. Treasuries, particularly short-term ones, can provide stability and a source of income during economic uncertainty. Treasuries are considered one of the safest investments as they are backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. Current high interest rates are ideal for this type of investment. By adopting a diversified approach that includes cash, gold, and treasuries alongside your stock holdings, you can create a portfolio that is more resilient in the face of a potential recession. This way, even if Steve Hanke's concerns about a recession prove true, the impact on your overall financial picture will be mitigated.